What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Fitness for Life podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Lohr, and today I have with me George is a personal trainer. You own your own facility, is that right?
Yeah, just opened up a facility in Miami a couple of months ago, so brand new.
Yeah. And you had a little bit of a unique situation with that facility. I remember talking to you a little while back where, you had to change things up and, pivot really quickly. So I'm glad to hear,
Yeah.
it's been cool to see your progress with, getting that off the ground. And then also, you did am I correct in saying that you did the art for your facility as well?
Yeah, yeah, I did all of the art that you'll see that if it's in the facility. It's a hobby of mine, so it's
Yeah.
something that's like a nice de-stressor and kind of take my mind out of doing things
Yeah.
strength and fitness related.
Awesome. Well, George, I appreciate you being here. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, me
I
too.
will, yeah, I want to jump in and just kind of, for those listening, I think it's really valuable for everybody to hear kind of where different people have come from and how they've gotten into fitness, and what their story looks like now. So, talk to me a little bit about where did you start, kind of on your fitness journey, and what brought you to the place you're at now.
Sure. Yeah. I went to school not knowing what I really wanted to do. I had a little bit of an interest in exercise and sports medicine, but I also had an interest in business. So I kind of went into it not knowing. I just picked a business major because I figured it was the easiest way to go.
Yeah.
And then I ended up switching after I hurt my back in 2008. And I got reintroduced to like training and therapy as like a more involved in my life. So I really kind of fell in love with it during that process after that injury, and then I
Yeah.
ended up switching majors back into a sports medicine major, and then graduated with that. And that was really how I kind of got started.
Gotcha. Nice.
Yeah.
So that's very similar to my background. I have a background in sports medicine as well. Worked as an athletic trainer for a while. Did you do any work within within that realm before moving into, the training realm a little bit more?
Mhm. I worked in a physical therapy clinic as an aide. I never
Gotcha.
went the route of doing like doctorate in PT or athletic training because I really
Gotcha.
wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go in.
Yeah.
But I did work in some of those facilities as like an introduction
Yeah.
to to it a little bit in the
Sure.
clinical work.
Yeah. And I think the clinic is a really, PT clinic, or, physio clinic, like those are really great places to get introductions to all types of, injuries,
Yeah.
rehabilitation, therapy, different modalities that are used. And just typically you've got, two or three different physical therapists or different
Right.
therapists working in a clinic like that. So you get exposed as an aide, you get exposed to different philosophies.
Oh yeah.
And,
Which was
and
for me that was so surprising. I didn't realize there was such going to be so many different like philosophies and different methods that people would use.
yeah, yeah, I think it's really interesting how, my very first job out of undergrad, I was working, um, at a university, and there were four of us that were brand new right out of undergrad who were put in charge of sports teams, athletics teams, and we approached things very, drastically differently, and it was interesting to see, pretty much across the board, everyone was really successful, in managing those injuries, getting people returned to
Right.
play, getting working with the strength and conditioning staff, and it was just interesting to see like the different philosophies play out. And I think that's a great lesson for people to take home is like whether it's training or rehab therapy, whatever it is, almost every almost every avenue has its merits,
Yeah.
right? So you don't have to just zero in on one philosophy and as like the best, the only way to do things. I think
Yeah.
when it comes to fitness, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to habits, anything like that, there's no one. one way to do things right.
Yeah, like
So
I always like the phrase like there's many different ways to skin a cat, I think is what people say. And it sounds so bad, but it's just like a a good way to go to
yeah,
kind of get that idea across. It's like you don't have to do things all the same way. There's no dogmatic approach that works really, really good and one works really, really bad.
yeah,
Like they all get the job done.
yeah, exactly. I love that. I love that. Um, Now you're doing something that's kind of unique within the fitness industry right now. I can't think of anyone who's doing even remotely what you do.
Hmm.
So can you talk about, talk a little bit about that for those listening? I think it's really cool to hear like how you've chosen to help people in that way.
Yeah. I mean, it really started pretty much on what we were just talking about is getting exposure to a lot of lot of different philosophies, different modalities, different methods, different systems, and realizing that there's not one way to do things. And I love learning, so I wanted to get exposed to a lot of different styles of learning.
Yeah,
And it's really difficult, or it was especially before I started, really difficult to find a lot of the education, events, and courses available for coaches and trainers without spending just endless hours looking online. So I
yeah,
decided to, kind of compile all those things together and make a directory of all these things for coaches.
yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's something that's really great. And if you're a coach who's listening to this, like you need to check out George's page. We will absolutely put that in the show description and in the at the end here. I'll make sure you get a plug for it.
Perfect. Yeah.
But you're wearing your gear, so hopefully
Yeah.
people can find you.
Right.
Yeah, hopefully people can find you regardless.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I've benefited from it. I'm on your email list, and
Hmm.
I am. And your April Fool's email was pretty good. I love that.
So I tried not to bury the lead too far into it. Like the subject headline was in there saying it
that
was false. So
that was great. That was awesome. I love it. But yeah, no, really appreciate you for what you do within the industry. Um, you know,
thanks.
do want to dive into, talk shop a little bit and dive into the training aspect of things. One of the things that, we had talked about talked a little about is simplifying, right? The fact that, most people or a lot of people can get into fitness and overcomplicate it pretty easily.
Yeah.
And I think the more people we have on social media, the more people who just get fit and then start a fitness account because of that, that don't quite know what they're trying doing properly and don't have the education or even the self education
Yeah.
to back that up. I think you're going to see a lot more of people overcomplicating things. So talk me through, like, when you're working with people, what does simplicity mean to you within fitness, and what does that look like when you need to dial things down a little bit?
Well, like you said, a lot of people will get their fitness information from various sources, and none of it has any cohesive message
Mm,
that will help them drive to, any goal that they might have. Like they might find
yeah,
information from one person that contradicts information from somebody else, and then they're going to try to implement both of those things together,
yeah,
and they're actually counterintuitive to one another, and it makes things so much more complicated because I mean, it's not their fault. They just don't understand that those two things are competing.
yeah,
So when I get those people come in, I like to kind of like sit down, find where they're at first,
yeah,
and try and get them to understand, like, hey, we might do some things we might do some things you've never heard of before,
yeah,
and just try to make them be okay with, like you have me as a coach, like let's work together and trust what I say as much as possible, and I try to build some of that trust as the process goes on.
yeah, absolutely. I think you know one of the things, obviously, the biggest thing you hit on there is just as coaches, our responsibility is to listen
Yeah.
and to gather good information before we, you know, provide the feedback that's necessary, and kind of, before we can really write a good guide for somebody and be that guide for somebody. It's sitting down, listening, asking good questions, and gathering good information to figure out, okay, where are you actually starting, both
Yeah.
physically and with your educational base. Like, what do you know, or what do you think you know that needs to be either reframed or built upon, right?
Yeah.
So if there's a foundation there, I'm always excited when someone has a lot of the building blocks in place. They're like, oh, I know I need to eat a little bit more protein. I know I need to do, a combination of strength training, a little bit of, strength training, a little bit of nutrition, a little bit of cardiovascular training, and, they get like each of the pieces, daily
Yeah.
movement, all those things. Yeah. So I think it's really cool as a coach when you see somebody who walks in and they've got a few of the building blocks, and
Yeah.
now you can really dive into, oh, okay, well, let's look at, some of the specifics of certain things, and, can we take you one step further?
Yeah. Like you really want to try to just build or add on to the things that they already have in their foundation. Like if
Yeah.
somebody already knows like all of those things that you just said, is like just to help them execute now.
Right.
So they can actually have those like, oh, I knew all this stuff already, and he's actually helping me just put it into play, on a consistent basis rather than trying to like change their entire philosophy around training on, the first couple of days that you work with them. Like if they want to hit heavy strength days and that's all they want to do, like, yeah, we can do that. It's just like, we'll work that in for you to do it consistently and
Right.
without injury. So so
Right.
you don't have to start and stop.
Yeah. We're not going to heavy bench 3 days a week. We're,
Right. Right.
yeah, we got to
Yeah.
mix it up a little bit,
Yeah.
to keep you from getting hurt, and to keep you getting stronger. So,
Exactly.
yeah. No, I think, gosh, one of the things that I find when it comes to, simplifying is the concept of progression versus regression, right? So, a lot of people come in, and this is something I've spoken with a couple of people about recently. Is they come in and they'll do the same workout for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden they want a new, they want a brand new workout. They don't want to be
Right.
doing any of the exercises they were doing for however many weeks, whether it be 4 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. Um, and here, one of my most successful clients, I kind of use her as an example in a lot of things, and she's, she's happy to do that as long as I don't pump her up too much. But one of my most successful clients, who's been with me for a few years now, is somebody who has been doing like some of the exercises on her list have been on there 2 days a week for 2 years. and
That's
and I'm like,
that's how it works.
yeah, you have to be committed to doing the things right, for over the long haul, rather
Mhm.
than just doing something because it's flashy or shiny.
Yeah. I mean that like that I try to highlight that with clients too, is like we're getting good progress with these, let's say like a couple exercises.
Yeah,
And it's like why would we really want to, make the drastic changes and chance not
yeah,
seeing the same progress or better or better or worse progress?
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
we have this really good result. Like
yeah. I
I
think
try
I've
to.
seen it. Shoot, Jonathan Goodman has shared a story about that with someone that he hired as a coach. Now,
Mhm.
he's the coach of coaches
Right.
out there, right? But as someone who's hired a coach himself, nearly, I think he uses it as the story to talk about why he almost fired his coach because of the communication. And he was like, "Oh, I was expecting a new program, but he was making progress in the direction that he wanted,
Right.
uh, and just had this automatic expectation. Even someone with that many years of experience in the field can get the feeling that, oh man, do I need to change things up? And so I think the point you made about progress is absolutely right. Like if someone is moving in the right direction with consistency, not getting injured, all of these positive signs,
Yeah.
it's, take that into consideration and say, okay, maybe I can just keep going in this direction and continue to see where this leads. Now, obviously, that changes when, if there's a significant plateau that you hit and things aren't progressing. Yeah, of course, you want to adapt, make some changes, and see what else might be beneficial.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you don't
so
even have to make drastic changes to exercises. Like you
yeah,
can make just small modifications to and choose a different one slight variation different, and it might be, different enough for the person to either enjoy it more or be able
yeah,
to push themselves a little bit harder with this new challenge,
yeah,
that it might still be working the same muscles the same.
yeah,
It just, might feel a little bit different. Like an easy one I've done recently with a client was a barbell RDL to a dumbbell RDL.
yeah.
Like they're not that much different from one another.
No, yeah, but the feeling of doing two separate dumbbells
Yeah,
makes a big difference to some people.
absolutely.
Just not having the stable nature of the barbell there is it's a big difference. And I think one
Yeah,
of the things that you talk about small changes that can be made that can make a big difference, right? One of the things I encourage my clients and anyone listening, I think this is something that's worth trying. If you're somebody who's having pain in your hips or your back or knee, and it's not pain to the point where you're injured and can't perform the motion, but if you're getting irritated in some of those movements like a squat or like a lunge, play around with how wide you're keeping your feet, play around with where you're pointing your toes. Can you elevate your heels a little bit?
yeah,
Can you adjust your chest position? Do you need to go chest up? Do you need to lean over a little bit more? um, you know any of those things could be contributing to something small like that. And I think just something, most people do not take the time to kind of experiment with
yeah.
that. And I think it's a really valuable experience is just to go through some of that, and don't neglect something as small as position in those things.
Absolutely, yeah. And it can be a good way for you to explore learning how your body works a little bit.
Absolutely.
For a lot of other clients that I work with, is either they don't understand how their body moves so well in space.
Yeah.
So learning an exercise in one technique is the only way that exercise is done.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, just being able to explore how your body works, like slight foot variation in stance width or heel height,
Yeah.
can make a whole big difference of what the exercise feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. I'm volunteering for a buddy of mine is a local soccer coach, and I've been volunteering, an hour of my time each week to train his team. And it's funny, especially with the high school boys,
Hmm.
they, I'll come around and make an adjustment to one person's technique because they're having trouble. One of the things we're doing right now is RDLs. And they're having trouble, as high school kids do, uh, rounding their back too much, not stabilizing at the hips,
Right.
that sort of thing. And so it's like, okay, why don't you make this adjustment? And then I go to the next guy and I don't make that adjustment, and they're like, well, shouldn't I just be doing it like he's doing it? And it's like, no, not necessarily, because
Yeah.
I think that's something that's important to recognize. Is everybody has a little bit of different anatomy. um, you know there's slight differentiators, and it's also like everybody's natural ability is different, so everybody's starting from a slightly different point.
Absolutely.
So we have to make these small tweaks that are helpful for um, you know kind of highlight our uniqueness.
Yeah. Like they don't have to pick a completely different exercise in order to get the same benefit. You can just make a small change, whether you consider it as a coach a progression or regression
Right.
in the technique. It's really, if it allows the person to do the exercise consistently, over time. Like that's the goal of the exercise. There's
Yeah.
no set, like we talked about, set in stone way to execute consistently.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny how, something like that, you can put it in place and it doesn't have to be forever. Like that's what I think sometimes people are like, oh, am I going to always have to do this? It's like, no,
Right.
one of my clients currently, when I first started working with him, he was having knee pain, we could barely get him up to like 100-pound squat. Now he's young, very strong, getting ready to compete in a strongman competition. So he's,
Progressed quite well.
he's progressed quite well since then. And that was quite a while ago. But that being said, like we started with, hey, we're putting a heel lift in all of your squats. And most professionals use some sort of heel lift, whether it's built into a shoe or they,
Yeah.
add that to their squat in some way. And I'm like, listen, this doesn't have to be forever, but for now, this is what works for you. You can squat without pain with this.
Yeah.
And he's continued that up until probably the last year. So that was something he kept for 4 years, really built up his strength, and then all of a sudden he didn't need it.
That's
And so,
incredible.
yeah, and that's one of those things that like strength, over time, building up strength over time overcomes a lot of the small things. Um, even just for him, it was like, okay, his knee pain just went away after building up, a couple 100 pounds of strength there. No, that's not the case for everybody. You're not going to get that much for everybody, but for someone who that knee pain was like debilitating, making those adjustments, again, that's a 5-year journey for him. So not a small amount of work put in there for someone who trained 5 days a week for 5 years. But
like an immense amount of patience and
yes.
like you said, working with him to be able to do that. And I think that's important to tell people also. It's like, hey, we can get past these things. You just have to have a little bit of patience and drive with it.
Yeah. And that's, I think it's valuable for people to hear that was not 5 continuous years of us working together. That was interrupted by a couple different spells. Not that there's anything wrong with someone working with a trainer for that long. Yeah. Some people just enjoy it. And he's certainly one of those. But, with exactly what you said, with the right amount of patience, you can get impressive things done. When we started training together, he was maybe 160 pounds. So not at all ready for a strongman competition. Now, that being said, he's not quite hit the minimum weight, so we're on our way up, because that was a recent change. But yeah, it takes a good deal of dedication and a good deal of patience. I think I was looking at Eve Guzman had a post recently that had a lot of activity on it, talking about and then kind of changing gears from strength to weight loss here. Talking about, if you're, I think the exact one was, if you're a woman who is less than 160 pounds, you're not going to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. It's going to be more like a half pound. And I think that's one of the things that, you talk about needing patience, especially for those scale goals, things that are very focused on a scale. I think a lot of people lose patience too quickly. So what do you say to people who are struggling with, not having the patience with the process, and maybe even facing plateaus, even if they're doing all the right things? What do you how do you kind of circumvent that?
I definitely try to give it a little bit of like, what do they call it, a compliment sandwich.
Yeah.
With people is, highlight some of the things that they do really well. Like if they've had, even if they've hit a recent plateau or are struggling now, if they've had results in the past, like it's really nice to reinforce those to them if in that moment. because it can feel a little bit overwhelming if they're sitting in a plateau for a little while. Like,
Yeah.
oh, like there's no way I can get past this, and the results are impossible. And it's like, oh no, you remember when you started, you thought the same thing at that point, and we worked and worked and worked, and we saw results. We just
Yeah.
need to get, try to refocus some things, and that's when I'll try to put in like, hey, maybe we can hit these new things as some targets,
Yeah.
reorganize ourselves a little bit, and try to give them some new direction and refocus them on goals that they have, past this plateau. So we can kind of work with like, you have the ability. Here's some direction that we can focus on, and then start to work on implementing that with them, and like try to make it something that they have at the time of we finish our session or communication, that they have some motivation to try to work on it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the recent things that I've started using more often, and I think I use this with people who are struggling to lose weight, especially when I know that strength gains have happened,
Hmm.
and it's not been it's not been the focus, but it's been something that's kind of happened as a byproduct of the process for where we're going.
Right.
Um, you know, one of the things I'll do is see if I can give someone a pretty massive strength win, in terms of,
Oh, that's
um,
huge. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
you know,
huge.
talking about like, okay, maybe we've only done, maybe we've been going for volume because we're trying to, um, you know, stimulate the muscles and get, that growth that we're looking for, and we maybe haven't quite gone for just muscles, um, muscle size, because weight loss is a thing.
Right.
Um, and so now I'm like, okay, I know the strength gains are there. Let's tap into that. Let's give someone a win. One of my favorite things is like, okay, especially if they're in person with me, that's rare because I'm mostly working online. But if they're in person with me, taking them and saying, okay, we're going to lift, 100 pounds today if they've never done it.
Hmm.
Because taking someone from two digits to three is a pretty exciting
It's huge. Yeah.
endeavor. So, okay, we're going to go from, 75 to 100 today. Because you've been doing volume. I know you can do it. Let's do it. And, sometimes I'll do that without telling them. I'll just be like, hey, just lift the bar. A lot of clients don't want to hear it,
Yeah.
in terms of like, hey, I don't care what the number is on the bar. Just tell me what I need to do. And so it's like, hey, just lift the bar. Then you tell them that was 100 pounds. Nice job.
Yeah.
And now they've come back with, okay, I've got, I see where this is going. I see where I can go. And, typically they come away with like, okay, I'm going to trust the process. I'm going to, recommit and work through it.
Yeah. Trusting the process part too is another like big piece to try to bring up to some people.
Yeah.
That I always try that also. It's just like, hey, like we're going to see some ebbs and flows,
Yeah.
some peaks and some not so big peaks and some valleys that we might come into, but that's part of the training process of a yearly training cycle.
Yeah.
Is our years are relatively messy in general, with holidays and and
Yeah.
and birthdays and all that stuff in there anyway, and then that on top of actually needing to provide for other people in your life, can add a whole bunch of other mess into trying to get these perfect linear results in the gym.
Yeah. Yeah. Throwing in holidays, I think, is a great example. Um, I had a number of people start with me right around November, which was,
Mm,
it's a tough time to start
yeah.
because you've got, 3 or 4 holidays right in a row that you're bumping into, where they're kind of extended. They're not,
Oh
it's
yeah.
typically a lot of family visits, maybe 2, 3, some people even 4 different family,
Yeah.
gatherings, and trying to get all that in, and especially if weight loss is in your goal, it's a really tough
That's
time.
tough.
And I frame that with, I do my best to frame that with them and say, hey, listen, this is a tough time to lose weight, we're going to give it our best shot. But don't be discouraged if you don't see the results you're looking for in a holiday season like this. Maintenance is a wonderful thing within, the next 5 weeks,
Yeah, absolutely.
because it's just a tough time. There's way too much social pressure to overeat, overdrink, overindulge, and be underactive, because we're going in, for a lot of people, the weather's not great. It's way too cold outside for a lot of people. There's not a whole lot going on in terms of activities,
Right.
because everybody's traveling. So it's one of those things that makes it really tough. And you see the difference between the people who get that, and the people who let it discourage them.
Yeah.
And it's, I would say the people who have let it discourage them, they've given up on the process already, or are just now coming back around to it. And the people who get it, they're still in it. They're still working through it, and they're making the progress that they want.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, we're coming kind of to the end of where we want to be in terms of time. George, is there anything that we didn't touch on, that you would like to touch on while we're chatting?
More, I guess, more or less on, like, if you're working with a coach, like I know you work with a lot of clients online. If you're working with a coach, just definitely be open with communicating a lot to them in terms
Yes.
of like things you feel, because we're talking about different exercise variations,
Yeah.
and it's like the as much as even in person, we want to provide this like really important feedback
Yeah.
for the people we're working with. Like we can't feel the things that you feel.
Right.
So if you're feeling something as the athlete or client in the session, it's like be as open as possible with the coach you're working with, because we can make small variation changes
Yeah.
to an exercise and just have it be more successful or less less miserable for the person who's doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic point. I think especially, if people are considering coaching, or if they're already in that, one of the things that, I notice about the difference between clients who end up, dropping off early versus those who have really quick success, is the one for the most part. Now, there are always exceptions to any
Of
rule,
course.
but for the most part, the people who send me a lot of feedback are the ones who are getting, a lot of those small tweaks that are helping them to be successful over time, right?
Right.
The people who are sending all that feedback, because they're actually benefiting from the knowledge that we provide,
Yeah.
and that we can bring to the table when it comes to that. If you don't talk about how things make you feel, especially when it comes to exercises and fitness, and other aspects of it, right? The nutrition side of things as well.
Yeah, like
Um,
big time.
yeah, if you're not providing, telling people how, telling your coach or telling whoever your accountability person is, how things are feeling for you, can't read your mind,
Exactly.
and so I can't support you in that way. And so I think it's a
Yeah.
really great thing to mention, because people who make that communication are gonna more likely than not gonna succeed, a lot more than the
Absolutely.
people who won't. So
Yeah.
very good. George, I appreciate you coming on. Have loved having this conversation with you. Where can people find you if they're looking for you?
I spend most of my time socially on Instagram, so you can find me at Fitleet Nation, all one word. On there, you can visit the website fitleet.com. Also, there's a little chat widget on there. I spend time. It goes directly to my phone too. So
All right. Sounds
yeah,
great, man. Well, thank you again for coming on. For those listening, I hope you
absolutely.
guys got a lot out of this. We dropped the odd nugget in there. So we'll see you guys next time.